What's up, everybody? It's Chad. I'm back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Today, I got my homie Justin Trowbridge. Let me say that right. With me on today. Thank you for joining me, Justin.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's great having you on. I think I had you on last year. You may have been on last year. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think I had you on last year. I was on yours as well. So thank you for joining me. Today, we're gonna have a really great discussion. Justin does a lot in the industry, and he has some experience in different industries too, especially in the Midwest. So we'll dive into that. Also want to update you guys on this whole New Mexico and the tax thing, because our taxes are due to go up this year here in a couple of months. And then I'm gonna give you guys a quick update on the rescheduling thing, because there's some things that I got to update y'all on that. So without further ado, let's get the episode started. So again, Justin, thank you again for joining me, man. It's great to have you here. I love seeing you around at all the events. Whenever I see you, you're hard to miss. You're a big guy. So, it's,
I'm Norteño tall is what I've been told.
Yeah, there you go. Norteño tall. Yeah. But it's weird. Yeah. When I go up north to a concert, I can see a lot better. So it's weird. I don't know. But yeah, man, it's glad to have you on. So for those folks who are new to the show, who maybe don't know who you are, can you give us a quick rundown of, the little who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Justin Trowbridge. I run Route 66 Labs here in Santa Fe. Not an analytical lab, started out that way, but ended up becoming a marketing and web development kind of creative session there. And then I also work as the state brand manager for Tikal in New Mexico. Nice. So a lot of different little hats. And then I'm also part of a podcast that we're relaunching in Missouri, produced it here in New Mexico. It's called Waxy Brown's Review. And used to do FM radio with the same group guys doing, a 2-hour weekly hemp and cannabis talk radio show out of Missouri.
Nice. Yeah, that's actually, I was on your guys' show on that for a couple of years ago. So, it's a pretty cool show. Check that out and everything. Now, what brought you to New Mexico, out of all places? Because I met you at one of the cannabis, expos, a couple of years ago in Albuquerque, and, you and Waxy Brown. So, yep. What brought you here?
Honestly, it was COVID. So I was working for a data science company, doing their marketing and all that kind of stuff. And we did, we built some software for actually the hemp industry. It was basically a competitor to BioTrack and Metric that was focused more on recall than it was inventory control. Because in the hemp industry, if someone loses a super sack of hemp, it's not like it's the end of the world. It's not a federal crime. But if somebody loses a gram in between here and there, it's a bad deal. So our system was set up basically, if you found fentanyl and CBD, you could track it all the way back and see every single point that it touched. Unfortunately, the lead developer behind that passed away last year, so that whole project's kind of on the shelf eternally now. But doing that, it was like, I'm in Nebraska. There's not a whole lot of cannabis stuff going on up there. There's plenty of hemp stuff. Working remote, didn't have anything else to do. My folks are retired down here. They're like, hey, we got an extra place for you. So my girlfriend and I picked up and moved down to New Mexico and been here going on 3 years now. So it's been a pretty good fit.
Nice. Yeah. And, I see your journey, like on your social medias and stuff, and you post about like, becoming a New Mexican is essentially the way that I'm getting it. Like you're slowly starting to, start doing certain things that we do, and the certain things that you thought were odd are starting to just become normal day, daily stuff. So it's really interesting to see that. And, it's funny how life will throw you in a certain place, and sometimes that's the right place. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm kind of the oddball in the Midwest, because I was the guy that spoke Spanish with a Castilian accent. So when I would sell to, there's an aborrates that I had when I was selling wine and spirits wholesale. I walked in, and the guy that owned the place, was from Nogales and spoke fluent Spanish. And his son told me, he goes, that's my dad. You got to talk to him. He won't understand anything you're saying, though. He doesn't speak any English. So I walked over, and the Budweiser rep started laying into me in Spanish right in front of me, like this big, dumb, goofy white guy and all this horrible stuff. And I'm just I'm like picking up 90% of what he's saying. I'm just kind of smiling and nodding my head. And 3 minutes later, he says, did you read something funny or something like that? And I was like, no, hablo español también. And he went, and Isidro, the guy that owned the place, starts laughing. He goes, that's funny. I'm like, I knew you spoke English. And so Isidro and I ended up just crushing it with selling all kinds of high-end tequila, and brought in rompope and mezcals with worm. I mean, it was just amazing. And it was one of those things where the culture, the Spanish cultures, the Hispanic, cultures and all that kind of stuff, the food, I'm an Irish guy that likes to eat Carolina Reapers. I mean, it's just weird. So
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I got the opportunity to come down here and be in the land of Chile and all the fun things we get to do down here and have that outdoor life that we get to have in New Mexico.
Yeah.
It was a hell of a fit,
Oh, definitely. And it seems like you're loving it, even embracing the zozobra and everything like that, up north. And myself being from New Mexico, born and raised essentially, never been to it, not once. But, maybe one day I will. Maybe they'll have consumption there one day, it's something that I really want to fight for.
We got real close this year. I'm on the Centennial Committee for that and pushed to get a outdoor consumption lounge license. They were actually working with the governor, from my understanding. But Kiwanis is the main fundraiser for Zozobra, and they said we can't have cannabis consumption. It's a federally illegal product, and we are a federal nonprofit for children. So got real close. I was working with Piccaries even to have them host a private event on the thing, but it's a city park. And so we're pushing really hard, but it's definitely something that we got a lot of eyes on it. And they definitely recognize, because they get 10 phone calls a week. That's, every time the lights go off, people spark up and my little 5-year-old gets high.
Yeah.
And they're like, you got to do something. And like, we know, we're trying, we're working on it, but it's, it's like anything. It takes forever to get something to move, but they've got it started at least.
Definitely. And it's a start. I think this next legislative session, as an industry, we're going to have to push for this whole, I wouldn't want to call it like event licensing, but allow distribution of cannabis at events, allow consumption at events, even at expos and stuff like that, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we need to loosen it up a little bit more, because they opened up the access to alcohol during COVID. They didn't do the opposite. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's remained that way. And that's what's kind of odd. I can go to movie theaters and get alcohol. I can go just about anywhere, even sometimes like a little taco truck kind of situation. You can usually like get a beer. And so to me, it only makes sense that we should be allowed to consume cannabis at certain places, especially when there's adults around. If there's adults and there's a smoking area, or you're allowed to smoke, why not cannabis? You're not going to get high from the guy that's just smoking one doobie right there next to you. It's a little ridiculous. So we'll see what happens, and I'm excited to see what happens this next legislative session. It's going to be a lot of work because it's a 60-day session, and that's going to be nuts. But one thing I wanted to ask, can you touch on the whole Takal thing really quick too? I mean, it's on the hat, and you brushed up on it. I'm sure people were like, hey, what the hell about that?
Yep. So Takal launched back in December at High Times with Method Man. It's Method Man's cannabis brand, for anyone who doesn't know. Cave City Cannabis is the people that are in control of it. I just do the brand support. So what I'll do is, I'll try and get you guys connected with the team at Takal to come and do a full show on it, because there's just so much cool stuff going on there, and there's so many cool people in the mix that I think it'd probably be a fun show for you guys to have, especially get the guys on. So.
I mean, because they are all large. That'd be great.
He is a tough dude. He's got a lot of stuff going on. They just started filming Ghost 2 and all that kind of stuff. So they've got, he's always doing a ton of work, and it's just something where the guys at Takal Official know a lot more about his schedule and all that than I ever will. So it's fun working for that. It's kind of fun having Meth pay some bills for me while I'm doing the stuff too. So
100%, and get to. I mean, all the cool branding that you get to rock and stuff like that, so that's pretty dope, man. And yeah, I'd look forward to that. If you could, forward it, we'll get them on the show.
Yeah.
We'll have a cool episode, with Takal, and see what Takal, New Mexico, or just Takal in general is up to. Because you guys, how many states are you guys in right now?
13. We're actually 14. We just launched Florida here recently. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, moving on up.
Yeah.
Soon you're going to be available everywhere.
Working on it.
So you do, speaking of hats, you do wear a lot of hats in the industry. So, what are some other things that you do?
So I a lot of the website stuff that I do is typically in the prohibitive markets. So it's interesting when you look at a portfolio that I've got, and it's, FFL gun dealers and then cannabis people and hemp people and stuff like that. People are like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, there are really difficult marketing things that you've got to do, and not all the SEO works. And, it's turned into this weird niche of, if you're in an industry where it's really hard to just get out and get people's attention, then I'm the guy that can find the ways to get around it and find things that are compliant. And that's kind of where we've had a lot of fun with it. We've also created some products. We've got some things. There's something we call Captain Crossfade. It's like organic organic 5-hour energy, but for cannabis. And then when you smoke while you're on Captain Crossfade, it's a force multiplier. So it turns 1 pre-roll into 2.
Oh, okay.
So it's anywhere between 5 and 8 hours of energy. And then it also gets you a little more lifted when you drink it.
Right.
I'm working with some people on essentially what we hate to call it, but it's the quickest way to describe it, is cannabis Narcan. So when you have overconsumption, because, my girlfriend works at the hospital and they see little old ladies that have come to town and they're like, oh, I can finally eat some edibles. And they think an entire bag of gummies is 1 dose.
Yeah.
So you have almost an epidemic of, 80, 90-year-old people that are sitting in the ER just with the munchies on an IV trying to come down. We've got a partner in Oklahoma who's an endocannabinoid researcher of all things. And he actually wrote the medical marijuana laws of Oklahoma, who we worked with. We found a way to use organic products to manipulate your endocannabinoid system to kind of give you a parachute to come back to earth versus that panic, anxiety, freak out, call 911. Like, I think I'm dying. And then you've got a very expensive ambulance ride and all that kind of stuff, which we think would be great in consumption lounges and concert venues too. Because that's the last thing you want at a party, is a bunch of paramedics and cops pushing through a big crowd of people that are all either consuming or have just consumed.
Yeah.
And then we're working on some hemp-derived seltzers for the Midwest, just because it's such a tough market in there with all the different things they've got out there. So
yeah, let's touch on the Midwest for a little bit. I want to talk about that. This touches on the different hats thing, because you're heavily involved in the Missouri market, and as some of watching, Missouri is one of the more recent states that went adult use. Of course, it's kind of like the El Paso area where a large city kind of splits in half between 2 states, and a kind of whole situation. So it's an interesting situation on its own. So yeah, did you care touching on that?
Yeah, so the reason I got tied into Missouri was the show. So the guys were based out of Rolla, Missouri, which is where one of the schools is, and then there's one of the military bases down there. Was at Fort Leonard Wood, I think, is right there. So I kind of got looped into it through that, and then I've had a fortunate chance to meet a lot of the people down there. But it's an interesting market because it's not anywhere near the same setup as what we have. They're actually we're working with the group doing some social equity licensing. They're doing a lottery system. So they're trying to get people that had like cannabis convictions or, disproportionately adverse community situations, where they didn't have access to an accredited high school, things like that, where they're able to get a license and get a foot in the door with cannabis in Missouri. They only have, they have 10 labs, I believe, is the total number. So they won't have any more, any less. Transportation's a different ball game down there. It's like every state, right? It's just everyone's got a different thing going for them. And they even had at one point a company called Smoky River, where they basically found a small town of about 150 or 100 people and said, hey, how'd you guys like to make a boatload of money by putting in a concert venue that you can smoke cannabis at?
Yeah. And
every one of them said yes. They built out a facility that was going to have 2 hotels, 7 consumption lounges, 3 stages, cannabis villages. It was going to be the mecca for everything. But it turns out that some of these city council people were not on the up and up and ended up kind of voiding everything. So the venue was awesome. They were building it out when I went up and saw them for the first time. It had a lot of potential. I think it was going to be 17,000 people could be at an event, and it was open consumption just basically everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was totally legal. And the police, you'd see them walking through the crowd. I'm like, how's your evening going? I'm like, this is the easiest crowd in the world to police, because these guys are happy and having fun. Nobody's fighting.
Right. No one's mad.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the whole scene in Missouri is just, it's kind of coming up, and then it kind of hit a little bit of a stagnation point, and I think it's coming back around a little bit. But it's fun talking to guys in different states, because, like the hash holes that we've got down here, I brought it up to Waxy and Tim. They're like, you guys are doing hash holes? It's like, yeah, why not? I'm like, well, we're moving on to some other stuff. So, it's just fun seeing the different markets and then learning from everything that everyone's doing and seeing what works and doesn't work, and being jealous where you need to be jealous, and glad you don't have to deal with it when you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I look at the majority of states, the way they do their licensing isn't like New Mexico. Just to let everybody know. New Mexico's kind of original in the way that we decided to go with our licensing. We kept it cheap. We kept it easy entry, and that was almost like our equity. We do have an equity program within the industry. It's not really doing much. It's kind of stagnant. So I'm not too sure what's going on with that. Maybe that's another day for another episode to see what's going on with equity. Yeah, so it is cool to see what other states are doing. I like looking at New York because us in New York kind of went legal like around the exact same time, and our drug policy alliances work together on both bills. So that's why they kind of have similarities. Of course, there's some big differences because their licensing goes to the normal way that most places on the East Coast I've noticed do that, the lottery system and everything like that. So I've noticed that that's been a trend over there, but we decided to go a different route here, and it seems to work a little too well for us. But that seems to be changing since a lot of places are kind of going out of business, especially here in Cruces. I don't know if you're in Santa Fe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if there's been a few going out of business there, but here in Cruces, there's been quite a few that are going out of business. It's unfortunate, but that's the industry, and that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah, and that's market correction. I mean, it's just kind of part for the course. Unfortunately, I mean, everybody gets in it, and not everybody can last the long term. Not everybody has the same dedication to it. There's all kinds of reasons to it. Sometimes it's just a bad location, and it just sucks because I've seen a lot of really good operators just, the building they thought was going to be perfect, the road, changed, or the lights shifted, or, whatever, something that the city did, and all of a sudden they have the worst possible spot for a dispensary, and changing that location is tough. So
yeah, it is. And, that's one of those things, like, here in town, a lot of people decided to put their dispensary on Solano, and Solano just so happened to be like Green Mile here in Cruces, and it's just stacked with dispensaries like the whole way down. I mean, even here at the studio across the street, literally across the street from us right now, is a dispensary. So like it's kind of ridiculous. So yeah. And what about the Midwest? Are you starting to see like a similar trend going on there with like, stabilization, or are they just kind of have such a chokehold on the licensing that it would be impossible for that to happen?
So I'll give you a great example of kind of the Midwest issues. So I'm from Nebraska, do not have a medical program. The governor, when I was still there, is in Rolling Stone magazine being quoted as saying cannabis kills children, which is unbelievable that he even got into a conversation with Rolling Stone. But the fact that he said that, got away with it, it is what it is.
Yeah.
They had put medicinal cannabis on a ballot, and then they added gambling to the same two issue ticket. And then because it was 2 issue, then the sheriff got in and canceled it, but they passed gambling, but didn't pass cannabis.
Yeah.
And I was on the Industrial Hemp Coalition board, and then the different Hemp Industries Association board as well. And they passed a bunch of licenses for manufacturing and processing of hemp.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, what are we going to do about these extraction guys? We got to figure out how we're going to get them. Like, you already issued licenses. Like, no, manufacturing is decortication. That's making fiber. Like, no. You didn't specify extraction or fiber. You just said processing.
Yeah.
So these people are processing, and they're making CBD oil, and they're making, Delta 8's got a huge market in Nebraska and things like that. But the state didn't even realize they passed the ability for someone to manufacture those products. And so they had to backfill and catch up. And so what you're seeing now in the Midwest, especially in states that don't have cannabis programs, are the smoke shops that are geared towards looking like dispensaries as much as they can. And then once they flip that green light, then the goal is that they're going to be able to switch the inventory basically from, a lot of it back was flower that was treated with D8. You're starting to see a lot of THCA flower come into the state. Iowa, on the other hand, they have one company that does everything for.
So is Iowa a medical state?
They have one company that supplies cannabis for the entire state.
That sounds like a nightmare.
They also consult with the state on their hemp laws. So they said, look, if you don't want to have problems with arresting people with the wrong product, then just make smokable hemp illegal in Iowa. And so they did that.
God. Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where I worked with a farmer with that software that we did, who there's one guy outside of Des Moines that had a 60-acre field of what he was growing for CBD back then when the prices were still decent. And you have to get it tested by the state, and then it goes to the state crime lab to be analyzed. Mm-hmm. So he, did what every farmer does, and they sent out a bunch of products to get sampled by different labs to see what the potency comes back at. And he was coming back at 0.16, 0.18. I mean, it was very low THC. And then the state came in, and then they brought in every agency in the state, because he was by Des Moines. So we had the state police, the county police, the city police. I mean, he had like 30 police cruisers pull up on his property just to see what hemp sampling looked like and what a hemp field looked like, and talk to him and all that. And he was, good guy. But he hosted them fairly well. But then the crime lab came back, and I think they told him his crop was at 6% for hemp. And he had to destroy the entire field. There was no remediation. There was no amendment. There was no phase 2. He had 6 different labs tell him he was compliant, but the state crime lab said he was hot, and he had to burn the whole thing.
Holy shit. And, that's an issue that, in any hemp program, especially here in New Mexico, it gets warm, they go hot, they pop. So yeah, that's unfortunate to hear, and, most of these states that don't have medical or anything, hemp is at least legal federally. So, that's at least allowed, but at the same time, you run into this whole, some states will ban smokable items, like in Texas, you can't smoke medical cannabis, they don't have that. But they have Delta 8, and then they have the THCA, and all this other stuff. And, you can find that everywhere. And it intrigues me.
The science behind those minor cannabinoids is what really intrigued me about the industry as a whole. Yeah. Because, I was wake and bake smoker, Mexican brickweed. I'm seeds and stems old, back in college. Yeah, and so it's one of those things where when I was in corporate America, I couldn't do anything, and then got into a state where hemp became legal. And you started looking at, the hemp-derived D9s, the D8s, the D10s, HHC, THCA, THCV. I mean, just all these different little cannabinoids. The nice thing is that Prohibition pushed the exploration of those cannabinoids and what they can do. The bad part is that they got abused real quickly. So Iowa's recreational program is basically a THC hemp-derived seltzer market, and that's it. And so you have hemp, THC drinks being served in bars and restaurants and entertainment venues and stuff like that. But the state said, hey, this is not what we intended. You guys are 8 milligrams per can. It can't be that high. So now they're rolling it back to 4, which means all the products that are in existence in Iowa are now non-compliant.
Wow.
So you've got a lot of major operators that are having to push, truckloads of hemp-derived seltzers into other states because it's not compliant anymore.
That's ridiculous, and then it drives more markets in other ways, and that's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, because Iowa, has an opportunity to do something kind of cool, that they have a decent, cool, location on where they're at. But that's unfortunate, like over here in the West too, we have our own over here in the West, Idaho will not budge on cannabis. Actually, they tried to pass a law that if cannabis ever becomes legal federally, they will never legalize cannabis. They're like the never ever state. And with that being said, who is the Idaho of the Midwest?
I think it's going to be a toss up between Nebraska and Kansas, honestly. That's I think the two of them are going to butt heads and see who's the last one standing. But it's something where, and it's funny because you talk to people, I introduce myself to people like, where are you originally from? Like Nebraska. They're like, where the hell is that? And I still would get asked questions like, do you guys still use covered wagons? It's a totally, it's a state that I don't think a lot of people give it, its due course and all that kind of stuff, because they typically are flying over it. And I get it, right? Yeah. I still get people, when I tell them to mail me something in New Mexico, like, do I need international postage? I'm like, no, it's new, not old Mexico. There's a difference. Yeah. But, the state with Nebraska, you're starting to see a lot of healthcare groups up there. There's a hospital. It's like the premier Ebola clinic in the planet or something like that. So whenever there's an Ebola case, they fly in patients and things like that. And a lot of research and a lot of groups like that. So I feel like Nebraska might fall before Kansas. But at the same time, you've got a lot of conflicting ideologies, because the farmers, out there, they grow beans and corn. And so they start looking at, back in the early part of hemp, you're looking at what, 35, 40 grand an acre for hemp. And then all of a sudden now it's way less than that. $1,000, maybe $2,000, just depends on what you're growing. But there were farmers that were like, okay, I've been doing corn for 70 years. How do I do something else? Yeah. And it's a different, environment in Kansas where you've got wheat, and there's a lot of hay being grown down there and some other things. But It'll just be interesting to see. I think the agriculture side of it's really going to push which direction they go, because farmers are king in the Midwest. I mean, they are pushing so many bushels per acre. It's insane.
I was helping a buddy move from Oklahoma, and they have the price per pound of different items on the radio. That blew my mind. I was like, we're country in New Mexico, but we ain't this country.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit. Like, another world.
And the other fun part of living up there was at the beginning of COVID, I lived downtown in Omaha, and I could see Union Pacific's national headquarters. Yeah. And I happened to be watching Hell on Wheels, which is the story of Union Pacific's expansion. And I reached out to somebody at Union Pacific, and I said, hey, have you guys ever moved hemp by train? And they're like, yeah, we talked about doing it with some guys out of New York one time, but the super sacks, holy cow, they're so expensive and da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, well, it's federally legal now, so you can move it. And like, oh, could you help us? So I was helping Union Pacific move hemp by rail car from LA to Denver, which is an ironic 2 places they did it. Golden State Hemp actually did the first legal movement of hemp in a rail car on 420. Good for them. But it was hilarious talking to people that have moved major commodities for, a couple centuries now. Like, so the seeds, we can just dump them in a big hopper and then you spit them out the other side. Like, no, they got to be separate, because this genetic is different than that genetic. And this could be CBG and that. And then they're like, okay, so then are these things in bags? Are they, bales? And it was hilarious. And they said when it pulled into the rail yard in Denver, it was a warm spring day, and they could smell it from everywhere. I mean, it was just biomass and sacks. And they're like, oh my God, we've got an illegal train car. And they're like, no, we know what this one is. Yeah. And so they had to unload it outside because they were afraid it would contaminate all the other product in the produce building that they were unloading. And in that process, I found out that Union Pacific still gets hit with fines every time they find smuggled cannabis on one of their trains.
Really?
It was something on the tune of like $13 million a year they have to pay in fines when people smuggle cannabis on their trains and they find it coming across the border or something like that.
That's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, big time.
It's like, this guy smuggled it. We didn't know. We got charged. That's a dick move.
But they're big enough that they just eat it. I mean, they just didn't care.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, a lot of things get transported in this country through train. We know trains very well here in New Mexico, so, we know that very well. And that's interesting that, they were really dumbfounded on how to, transport, hemp once it was legal, and they had to ask almost a random person, how do we do this? That's how clueless our government is, and we'll get to this, conversation later about rescheduling, but that's how it is with our government with rescheduling. They have no fucking clue right now. But we'll talk about that more. I really wanted to talk, a little bit about, the radio show that you do, with Waxy Brown. You mentioned that's out on FM radio. That's dope. That you guys are able to do that. How are you able to do that? Because I work at the radio station and we're not able to do that.
So, full transparency, the show doesn't exist on FM anymore. Okay. The guy that owned the station was getting ready to sell it, and the person that was buying it was into the Bible Belt kind of stuff. And like, we can't have non-Christian values on the radio. And so they pulled the show right towards the end of the run and all that. But I think part of the reason was because we were in a smaller market. And so anyone who listened to it live on FM was finding it through the live streaming feature that was built into it. Yeah. But at the same time, we had to follow FCC guidelines. And then when we brought in the podcast cameras, which is what I was producing out of New Mexico, we had to stop smoking in the studio because it was an old 1990s board, like old school toggles and levers and stuff like that. And it was one of those things where we have people come on air and they would drop an F-bomb every third word. It's like, you got to stop. And, and the guys at your station can tell you that FCC fine is per word and it's 6 figures. Yeah.
So Gino's shaking his head, very hard right now.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where we were, every time it happened, it was just like, oh yeah, well, FM. And then the hard part really was, we had to follow the FM broadcast. So when we went to commercial break, we'd run the commercials that they were required contractually to play. And then the guys would go take dabs in the back room, and then they'd put on songs for 10, 15 minutes. So me as the guy doing the podcast side, I'm just sitting there watching the same ads just over and over and over again, watching the screen. I'm like, get back, we got to do the rest of the show. Get back, quit doing dabs. So the show ended, I believe, right in the early part of last year. And then we've been, or no, towards the middle of last year. And then we've been working on revamping it, and we're re-rolling it out as a podcast.
Okay.
So we've got a lot of companies that they didn't get the same reach they wanted with the FM, but they recognize that there's a voice through Waxy and through the stuff we were doing. So we're going to relaunch it here as Waxy Brown's Review. And we'll probably do hour-long weekly shows instead of 2-hour weekly shows, just because the commercial breaks and the music and the dabbing kind of took us a little longer than it needed to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it'll be great because we'll have a lot of focus on, veterans. We'll have a lot of focus on, the industry itself and what's changing, what rules are coming up that are different. And, it'll be nice to have it back. And this time we can do all the goofy shit that we want to do because it's not on FCC guidelines. So,
yeah. I mean, that's nice too. That's why my podcast is where it is. It's not on air on the radio because there's a lot of shit that we can't say just like that. What's that, $6,000 right there, Gino? So yeah, that would have cost us $6,000 right there. And my guests too. Sometimes they'll cuss like, oh, can I say that? And I'm like, oh yeah, here you can. And I can't even say cannabis and stuff like that. So like we run ads on live, but that they can't say certain things. They have to say it a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I run into the same thing. I was just curious how you guys went about it too. You guys are in the same world, and that was the great thing, and that's what's so cool about knowing Waxy is. And he told me this before. He said there's not many of us in cannabis media. He said so we all got to kind of try to at least get together, work together because there's not many. And I'm like, shit, you're right. There's so many cannabis influencers, et cetera, but cannabis media, like there's not a lot. Like it's interesting, and I tell people when they either ask about Waxy or like who he is, I'm like, he's pretty much me of Missouri, and some, so that's just the best way I could put it if you're from New Mexico. It's great that you guys work together still.
And a lot of you're right too with the media side of it. I think the thing that gave us a lot of leeway was that we brought on state senators and representatives. We brought on endocannabinoid scientists. We brought on medical practitioners. We brought on veterans. We brought on people that were dumping tens of millions of dollars in investments into the industry and creating jobs and doing that. Because I think a lot of people, they'll see the ability to get on a microphone and put a camera in their face, and they want to do, 20 minutes of Cheech and Chong bits, and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, there's a place for that. That's entertainment. Yeah, sure. But if you're getting a message out, guys like you, guys like Waxy, that really educate and deep dive and talk about the laws. And it's something that if you were a prohibitionist, you could tune in and you'd learn something, and it wouldn't be a condescending or attacking voice. It would be something very friendly, very matter of fact, very welcoming and inviting. And I think that's what we need to do as an industry is let people know like, hey, you're going to get things wrong until you know what we're talking about. And let's educate you. And it's not like I hate you for it. It's just please don't pass a law until you fully understand what this is.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm glad you guys, really touched on that and got politicians involved. I've had a couple on my show before. I really want to get into that more. I really wanted to have the CCD on. They're really hard to get a hold of and to get in. So that's the whole thing. But yeah, there's a time for stoner time, and my show just isn't about stoner time. It's about, educating the people, getting people involved, and educating people on the legislative process. There's a lot of people nationwide who don't know how their own state process works, with their legislative, and there's certain things in New Mexico that the way it works, it doesn't work in the other states. Like our politicians don't get paid, like that's why they all run businesses still. So, that's not the case in most other states, like it's rare like that. So it's great that, Waxy's still at it too. I love, when I stumble upon his stuff and, I'm like, God, thank you, man. And there's times where, he schools me too, and, we'll school each other. It's great. And that's a great thing about information and, you're able to share it, and information is meant to be shared. So, I thank you guys for, keeping that. But with that being said, you guys also you're doing some movie stuff too, right? Some actual production. So, do you mind if we play a clip of what is it, the Gortach? Gortach?
Yeah,
Am I saying that right?
Gortach.
Yeah, the Gortach. Yeah, let's play the clip of that real quick.
There's measure making on my floor, man. What's going on, man? What are you wearing? That's my shit. That's what I brought. This is like, what is this? This is a ghillie suit, so I can hide from. You're dressing like the Gortach? A little bit, yeah. I mean, I wanted to hide a little bit, so you didn't see me sneaking up on him. He has a camelback? Yeah, it's gonna camelback. Why would it not? Oh man.
So what's your main weapon of destruction that you brought with?
Well, what?
Oh, come on.
What?
You're in Missouri, man.
Yeah. I'm from New Mexico. It'd be weird if I didn't have one of these. He brought like an AK-420 to the party. Like,
That's not quite what it is. But yeah, that's close enough.
yeah.
I mean, a real like superpower. What do you call those things?
The high-powered.
High-powered blowers, you know?
Yeah, it's
Are you
blowing.
gonna rob it?
Jesus, all right.
It was fun.
Man.
That whole project, though, the interesting side of it was, so we're going to do a cannabis camp.
Yeah.
And the idea was to have people come up to a camp, like a summer camp kind of venue, be able to do the summer camp activities or go and do cannabis related things like learn how to roll a blunt, learn how to, make a hash hole, whatever. And then the other side of it would be having medical people and other people there to talk about the actual science and legalities behind it. And any good summer camp has to have a monster story. So the idea was we were going to have the Gortach. And so the Gortach is basically cannabis prohibition in persona. And we linked it to a bunch of historical events. There was an earthquake in Missouri and all that we claimed that was the origin of it. I may or may not have edited a Wikipedia page to include the origin story to the original Irish folklore. And so we the two campsites that we had backed out, one of them backed out like 6 hours before tickets went live. And so it was something where everyone's like, I can't wait to go do this. I have to go do this. I want to go do this. And it's like, we can't. We just ran out of time in the year. And so we looked at it and said, what could we do? And we said, well, we could make a movie about it. So we went full guerrilla with it. We did, I bought a camera at Walmart and returned it after filming. Thank you, Walmart, on your loose policies for returns. But the whole idea behind it was, yes, it was funny and it was entertainment. We did Cheech and Chong meets Blair Witch. But the idea originally was to hide advertising for cannabis companies in it, because you can promote being in a movie on social media. You can show your clip in a movie. You can, say you're part of a program, but you can't advertise for cannabis. So we went and approached, I want to say 30 or 40 different companies that were friends and allies of the show. Like, there's no way you can do a show for as little money as you guys are asking for. And we pulled it off for $500. So it's not high quality production by any means, but anytime if you watch the movie, it's free on YouTube for anyone that wants to watch it. But it is, anytime you see the narrator, which is basically me with a, backlit, wearing a cowboy hat and a voice modulator or whatever, that was supposed to be a cannabis ad where it was somebody saying, hey, these guys are doing it the wrong way. They need to be, grabbing some flour from XYZ company because we had the best flour in all of Missouri and all that. And then after people saw it and they watched it and they laughed their asses off during a sesh watching it, all that kind of stuff. They're like, you got to do a sequel. I'm like, yeah, you got to pay me to do a sequel. Because the first time around, it was like pulling teeth, and then we finally got everything squared away. So, it's something where, Waxy's in the middle of potentially becoming a campground operator in Missouri. So we might have a camp to be able to do cannabis camp in Missouri. And the Gortach will definitely be part of it, but it's anyone wants to watch it, you can watch it on YouTube for free anytime you want.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure Gino puts it in the description, the link, so you guys can go watch it and check it out. I think you mentioned it was on IMDb earlier before the show as well.
Yeah, so just as kind of a joke, I submitted, hey, I want to see if I can get IMDb credits, and shockingly, you can. It's not that hard. They'll take anything. So you upload a couple pictures of the release posters, you put a link to the movie and all that, and then you go through it. So I put it on my resumes. So if I'm ever looking for a job, I'll be like, yeah, I've got, director, production, editor, actor, all these things. I'm not the Screen Actors Guild or anything like that. So they might come after me, but for something that didn't make any money, but was an interesting concept, it works. Yeah.
And who knows, in the future it could. I mean, Napoleon Dynamite, they spent almost chump change and made so much money on that movie. So some things like that happen. It comes in sometimes simple packages.
Like Clerks even too. I think they did the same thing where they made it for nothing and became a cult classic. So it's something we had a lot of fun with it. And we actually talked to a couple other companies around the country that wanted to do their own version in different states. So we had some fun with making it look as real as possible, and there are a lot of people that played into it. But the best part was when someone's like, is it real? Is it real? Is this seriously real? Like, because anytime like, well, I've never seen anything or heard anything. Like, that's prohibition. They're hiding it. They're suppressing the information.
They don't want you to have it.
Yeah, you're not supposed to know about it. Shh. So,
Oh, that's great. Well, I look forward to the see New Mexico's Gortach coming up and everything. So man, I appreciate you so much and I appreciate you coming on the show and and sharing all this information with me. And I look forward to having you on the show again. Maybe next time me, you, and Waxy can all be together and have like a big old group show. So we'll see what's going on with that. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. I look forward to the Gortach 2, Revenge of the Munchies or whatever you guys call it. Yeah, right. Not bad, right? Thank you. It was on the fly. But yeah, I look forward to keeping this conversation going. And with that, we're going to start talking about taxes. So as some of you guys know, here in New Mexico, the taxes are due to increase this year, if not here in about a month. And so what that means is the taxes are going to go from 20% to 21%. But in reality, it's going to go from 12% to 13%, because the way the taxes work is it's a 12% right now tax overall just for cannabis. And then they tack on the state tax, which includes the city county tax in your area. So depending on where you are, it fluctuates a little bit on what that tax is. Here in Cruces, it ends up being about 8.1 something in the tax or something like that. So we're at 20% here in Cruces. Well, now next month it's going to be 21%. The reason why I'm bringing this up is this isn't just a one-time thing where it's going to go 1% and then stop. This is going to go all the way to we're almost at 30%. And it's going to keep going up 1% every year until 2030. And that's really alarming, because the way that you fuel a traditional market is you raise your taxes. Every state that has had very high taxes has ran into this issue, this exact issue. And the only problem that I'm seeing with this is, and I've tried to discuss this with legislators before, is the fact that they told me, like, well, I don't think the cities are going to want to reduce taxes or stop that because they really like this revenue. And I'm like, yeah, but this is temporary, because 50% of our sales or more come from Texas, or out of state. And so like, this is something only temporary. We're probably only going to benefit for maybe at the most 8-10 years, at the most. I'm thinking 5 or 6. So far with the information I gave you, what do you think so far with the taxes increasing and everything?
I mean, I'm of the mind that, the government is always going to do stuff that is sometimes contrary to the interests of the people.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's something where someone said, well, cannabis makes all this money. We need that money to pay for other things. Well, that's great, but you got to give us the credit where credit's due. If you're going to raise taxes, then make it easier for me to get a license. Make it easier for me to consume somewhere legally. Make it easier for me to transport product from the southern part of the state and not get seized by Border Patrol, or Homeland Security, I guess, is doing it. But, it's something where, a true negotiation is where everybody loses a little bit, but you both win in the long run.
Yeah.
And if it's just more money coming into the coffers for something else, and it's paying for anything other than what would benefit the industry to make more money, then it's kind of contrary. But at the same time, you get politicians that don't fully understand what the industry needs to grow and foster itself and be self-supportive. And they just see it as there's money on the table that we're not seeing for this highway program or this school program or whatever it is. And then to turn around and say, well, you can't smoke while you're driving, and you can't have kids using cannabis for medicinal purposes if they need it when they're younger. I mean, it's like, you can't take my money and say that you need to use it for the same thing that you're telling me I can't do it. That just drives me nuts.
No, it drives me nuts too. And to be honest, lately, a lot of people have asked me, where are our taxes going? And as you said it, during your conversation, it goes to the general coffer. That's the answer. Here in New Mexico, it goes into the general funds, and then it's dispersed that way and just shot everywhere. So we're not really too sure right now exactly where it's going. I can't tell you 5% goes to school. I can't tell you 10% goes to police. I can't tell you 40% goes to roads. But what I can tell you is I have noticed a significant change even here in Las Cruces. Certain projects are starting to get, off the ground. Certain things are starting to get fixed that were, ignored for many years. So I think we're starting to see a slow progression of improvements. But at the same time, I think we should be able to see where the hell is this money going. And I do feel that in the future, when we do go back, because I feel the legislature needs to go back and actually end this increase to 26%. I think we're good where we are. even if it stays at 21%, I think we're good where we are, because I think it's a threshold. We're already a poor state, one of the poorest in the nation. And, the local residents here, are having a hard time paying the 20% as is. If we go all the way to 26, guess where they're going? They're going to go to their homie's house and they're going to go pick it up from him. That's just what's going to happen. And we're going to see an influx of traditional market come back, and possibility of a few more shops going out of business. I'm not saying we're going to see a huge, slur of people go out of business, but, there will be people who will go out of business because of it. It's just the fact and truth of it. So that's why I wanted to bring this up, because with raising taxes, yeah, you get more funds and whatever, and as long as it's going to the right place, is great. But you also have to look at the long run too, right? What issues will this cause? Are we going to see a traditional market issue? Because, and I say this all the time, alcohol and tobacco still have a black market issue. There is still a huge market for untaxed tobacco and alcohol in the market. Like it's there. It's big, but it's small at the same time. Comparative to the other markets, it's very small, but it is an issue. It's an issue that they combat all the time. I've actually met people that have been charged with that. Like they were selling untaxable goods or something shit like that. So yeah, they're selling tobacco and not, paying the taxes. So, taxman came down and got his ass.
And as an industry too, I mean, this industry does a better job of outrunning the legality and the science. The science will always outrun the legality of it, right? Yeah. So, like all these states, like we don't have an adult use market. Like, okay, we're going to do hemp-derived Delta-9 seltzers. Boom, got an adult use market. Yeah. So this industry, because of where so many people came from and finding the ways and reading the details and understanding the laws, it's interesting that, we're sitting here having this conversation, because I know there's somebody right now who's like, okay, how do I get this untaxed and still be in the compliant market? What's the workaround? What's the little thing? And, I get it. I understand it. I respect that, because that's the way I think too. But at the same time, there comes a point where to get a legitimate industry, you have to say, okay, this is enough. Let's stop, just bleeding, don't bleed the golden goose dry. Let's let this be something huge and let it be what it is. And really let's all profit and gain from it as a community, as a society, versus, you bunch of potheads are going to pay us my money because I don't like you.
Yeah, exactly. The pot tax is essentially, what we pay. Because anytime that you mention, and I tell people this all the time when, they're getting into the industry, there's a few good reasons why you shouldn't name your cannabis company cannabis anything or anything weed related. One, banking. You can't get anything done with your business. And two, they will charge you 700%, if not more, on everything. Like something that was $400 is now $1,200. Like something ridiculous. They bleed the shit out of us. As soon as you say the word cannabis, they see money signs and they just start shooting everything up. So one of the best bets I tell people is, as much as you can, try not to tell them it's about cannabis. Not for federal government coming down and cracking you down. No, it's just so that your wallet won't fucking be abused, It's a little ridiculous. And then the taxes on top of it. It's bad enough that we already pay the 280E. And all that. So, most places go out of business because of 280E and because of, lack of paying taxes. Yeah. To be honest, it just causes more confusion. Every year you're going to have to go in, all right, goes up another percent, then, everyone has to get used to that, another percent, get used to that, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to always balance it between the ever changing state, city, county tax too, on top of it. So then it gets even more wild and crazy. And so it's just a big mess. I just feel that this next legislative session, we do really need to tackle this. There was, however, a bill in this past session. I think it was HB 99 or SB 99. I can't remember. There were so many. It was going to tackle this issue and essentially just remove the incremental tax, because they saw that there was an issue there. So hopefully this next the next legislative session, they can do that and take it out fully. So that way we don't have to worry about this issue at all. But going on in the future, I do kind of feel that, we need to kind of figure out, where's our money going? This, 50% that's coming from Texas, where's that money going? Because, we're happy we're getting it, but we want to know where it's being used for good. Like for me, I love education, and I really hope that, teachers start getting paid more. Like both my parents were teachers growing up. That was hell for us because we were poor. So if teachers got paid a little bit better, I think, the education in New Mexico might improve a little bit. You get better teachers, better teachers want to stay for the longer term up until probably retirement. And, we all benefit.
Absolutely. And the other thing too, I once heard that if you add the name Holdings to your company, you're eligible for all kinds of grants and better funding options. So
there you go.
There's an interesting little double play on words with holding in this industry. So, if anyone's looking for a new company name, I recommend Holdings for some reason. I'm not a consultant like that, but check into it. Maybe it works.
Yeah, maybe it works for you. I mean, Holdings, that's, I mean, there's a bunch of little tricks. Some people are saying, don't, set your company up as a LLC, set it up as something else. And, now we're hearing the Holdings, because, you could get benefits there. So, I mean, there's just, there goes with that. So, yeah, I just, I appreciate that one right there. That's actually a really good tip. Someone might actually use that. And if it does, let me know. And if it works, let me know, because that would be dope. And, we can start pushing that for people because, we all need a benefit somewhere, because paying out of the pocket for everything kind of sucks, especially when you're not making money at the beginning. So that's another reason why, the taxes are important. But I wanted to end this conversation on taxes with this. If you're a New Mexico resident, or if you are a medical cannabis card holder from anywhere and you come to New Mexico, you actually do not pay sales tax whatsoever, so long as you're not over on your limit of how much cannabis you can purchase, which is like 8 ounces. I know. So yeah, if you want to save yourself some money here in New Mexico, if you're a resident, especially if you're a resident, or even if you're a Texas resident, you can get your medical cannabis card in Texas. You come over here and use it, and you don't pay any taxes. I have a medical cannabis card myself. I've been a patient since 2013. I don't pay any taxes. I love it. I usually top that on top of a veteran discount, get an additional 10% on top of that. So I'm saving even more money. I've preached this, and I'm probably kicking the dead horse, and it's probably deteriorated by now, but you get way more benefits than that with just a cannabis card. Sometimes places will give you discounts, certain grow stores, smoke shops, they'll give you a 10% discount for having a medical cannabis card. Certain events, they'll let you in for free or at a high rated discount at certain places. So the benefits don't just stop at, being able to buy cannabis and having more legal protections. It goes outside of that. Some people acknowledge that. When I go to Colorado, I actually get a discount because they don't really have medical, and especially the way we have reciprocity here, they don't have that in Colorado. So when I go there, I get a really good discount because they'll give me the medical discount and a veteran discount, and they'll put it together, and usually that helps out a lot. I don't know if do you have your card yourself? You don't have to answer that, but I'm just asking.
I don't currently know.
Okay, cool. But I don't know how it works in Missouri or not, but do they pay taxes for medical there?
Yeah.
Okay. Man, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think from what I know, New Mexico is one of the few, if only, places where you don't pay taxes on it if you have a medical card.
That's wild. And to be honest, for us, it took us to get to this. It took it all the way to the state Supreme Court for us to even get that. And it took many years. And it wasn't until like 2022 did they really implement it more. Because like it had been there for a while, and it took a lawsuit that went all the way up to that high fucking court for us to even get that ruling. And so we barely have had it for a few years, but I'm benefiting the shit out of it. I don't like paying taxes. None of you do either, right? I hear it all the time. Fuck taxes, fuck the man. Okay, go fuck the man. Do it legally.
Yeah.
Go
Easy way to do it.
Cannabis card. Yeah, do what you preach. So. But yeah, that's all I really had for that one. And just to remind you guys, the governments, both state and federal, they work in fiscal years. So fiscal year 2025 in New Mexico starts in July, but 2024 year ends in June. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind. If you look at the bill and it says 2025 it starts, that's not a calendar year, that's a fiscal year. So that's one thing you guys need to keep in mind too. So those are all fiscal years, and they're weird how they start. So I just wanted to throw that in there before we move on to our final topic of the day, the rescheduling update. And this one shouldn't take too long. It was really short because really what happened was just another step in the direction that they're going with Schedule 3. Real quick, is there any questions you have about Schedule 3 that I could answer right now?
The biggest thing I've thought about, and I've heard people talking about it, is if cannabis becomes Schedule 3, then it goes into the pharmacy side of it, which means you have to have a pharmacy license. And some part of that equation, I haven't really had a chance to read up on it, but if that's the case, where you have to have pharmacy license through the FDA, you can't have a criminal background for that license. So
Yeah.
even if you had a minor conviction at some point, you know, in the industry now, you can still be a grower, you can still be bud tender, you can still whatever. But I'm just curious what the reclassification to Schedule 3 is going to do for who can and can't play in that market anymore, depending on where it goes and how it gets exempted here and all that. And I was on a call this morning with guys who are like, I brought the same thing up. And like, well, it sounds like if it's a state that has a cannabis program, it's still going to be through the dispensaries, but no one said that specifically, but it opens the door to being sold into a pharmacy under a medical. So it's just a lot of question marks, but that's why people like you exist, because you deep dive into this stuff more than I think I ever will. So I always enjoy hearing your feedback on the copious amounts of paperwork I haven't read yet. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem, man. And to answer that question, or a concern, really, yeah, I think what we're going to see is, like, here in New Mexico, we'll see us hand over the medical program pretty much to the federal government, and then it'll run essentially the way it is. Because I don't see every state ending everything they've done and accomplished. So just the states won't put up with that.
Yeah.
They won't. There's no way. So I think we'll be able to keep, like, the medical way that we have it with dispensaries. But I do think you're right on the pharmacy part, where, we will see it in pharmacies on that side. Will it be in flower form? I highly doubt it. We're most likely going to see those in pill form, in liquid form, even in sucker form, possibly, in an edible form. So that's going to be the huge differences. And another thing that I've brought up to people, and I haven't really had much answers from yet, and we'll probably figure it out, because that's what I've told everybody. The federal government is still figuring this out. So everything that I'm saying right now could not be the case when it comes time. Like, everything could be different. The federal government, like, if you got a medical cannabis program, it's fine. Don't even worry about it. Yeah, whatever. Because they're going to have to change so many rules. There's a couple of laws they're going to have to change, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to have to change. So anyway, I got on that rant and everything because, just this whole Schedule 3 thing is just really confusing. And, like, even our own federal government doesn't know what's going on. But
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff is possible. It's plausible that, they could just come down and say, oh, no, you got to do this and this. But I don't see that being the case, because, it's just moving in the scheduling. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And, now I will update everybody on what's going on with this update here. So I don't take up everybody's time on, just that one thing. And that is a good question. I'm going to keep everyone updated on that particular topic, because I had a registered nurse in here who's been doing it for years, and she had a suggestion on it too as well. So, we'll get more information as time comes, and, as this matures. But
Well,
looks like,
and now there's a hole in the roster for Schedule 1. Let's move fentanyl out.
I know, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we gotta put someone in there.
Yeah, you don't have a full team. Let's let fentanyl play in where cannabis has been for so long.
Yeah, because I don't know if a lot of people know this. Fentanyl you can get with a prescription. So I mean, like, literally, it's legal with the prescription. It blows my mind. I know vets who have had it as a prescription, and I'm like, they did what? Oh my god.
Yeah.
But it looks like the Department of Justice, they're going ahead with the process of moving cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Now, what this process does is essentially just moving it one step up, boom. And what this does is it gives us, the people, a 60-day period for public comment. And I'm actually going to link you guys to that. Go ahead and pop it up, Gino. Thank you. So this is the website that I'm going to give you guys. I'll pop the link in the description, so that way you all have it. This is where you're going to submit your formal comment. And if you look right there, Gina, can you put the mouse over that green button right there? There you go. Submit a formal comment. That's what you're going to click. You're going to go there, do your comment thing. However, there is a possibility that you can get a in-person hearing as well. Within the first 30 days of this 60-day time period, we have a time period to ask the DOJ for an in-person hearing, so that way we can give them our public comments either in person, online, etc. I'm not too sure how it's going to work yet. I do feel we all need to push for that, if not New Mexico, the whole nation. I mean, if I need to fly to DC however way, I will, just so I can go speak in, and say my comments for New Mexico, or as many of us can. But, I think it's really important that within the 60 days, all of us within the industry, users, industry people, doctors, whatever, even if you're ancillary, you help the industry out. You need to come here and comment on this, because this is very important. If you disagree with the DEA going to Schedule 3 and you want it rescheduled, tell them that. If you think that cannabis shouldn't be rescheduled at all and it should stay where it is until we figure it out with, deschedule, whatever, Tell them that. This is where your opportunity is to tell the federal government exactly how you feel in this matter, instead of wasting your time on Facebook, on Instagram with these long posts and nothing happens from it. At least here, something can materialize from it and real changes can actually happen. So this is actually going to be very important for us going forward. So if there's any time that we get a chance to get a 30-day, whatever public comment period, do it, because the government has to go and read those and they have to take them into consideration. It's pretty much law that they have to do that. Even when you call your representatives, they have to take the call, and their essentially the secretaries have to take your message. You know, if you say, well, you know, can I speak to so-and-so, you know, Senator so-and-so, oh, they're not here. Well, can you take a message for me? They have to take your message and they have to give it to them. Same thing with emails. They have to check it out. Now, certain senators have told me that if it's a copy and paste one, like, you know, normal does, they're just going to delete it because you didn't write that. And, you know, there's no substance in it. They've probably read it 1,000 times. So, you know, keep that in mind too. Don't copy and paste certain things. It'll probably just get overlooked. At least add a couple sentences of your own wording, your own words, so that way they can get it from you, because they have to read a lot of things. And if they start seeing things that are copy and paste, they're going to be like, okay, you don't care. So show that you care. Take 5 minutes, even if it's, you know, no Schedule 3, deschedule. That's perfect. Thank you. That's a public comment. That's all we need. So just get down to the nitty gritty with it. And are you going to make a public comment, Justin?
Yeah. And the other thing I've heard too is don't come in hot on the comments.
Yes. Thank you.
Don't come in like just guns ablazing, just like, you know, swearing them up and down, all that kind of stuff. Because they'll read it and they'll think it's angry. They won't read the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. Well, and you know, this is something that I tell people all the time. No one wants to work with an asshole. So, and to be honest, our representatives, they're our employees. So don't treat your employee like an asshole. You know, talk to them respectfully. Yes, I understand they all have this, you know, power thing going on, but the real power is with us, the voters. You know, because we can fire them if we don't agree in the masses. So, you know, keep that in mind. You know, give them the same respect you would also like if someone was coming to you with a concern. If you have a concern, you want someone to come up, tell you very calmly, very collectively, and as intelligent as possible, because you don't want to misunderstand what they're saying. And then a whole miscommunication thing happens and it's something else that it's not. So, you know, keep that in mind. Go in with a cool head. If you're copying and pasting something that you did post on Facebook, go in there, take out the fucks, take out the yous, you know, take out all that stuff that, you know, you may not read yourself if someone sent it to you. If you wouldn't like reading it, if someone sent it to you, don't send it to someone else, especially in a public comment. We're trying to be taken seriously as an industry here. And when you go in either stoner style or go in just guns a-blazing, it makes us look bad, you know, and, you know, it makes all of us look bad. You know, it's mass punishment and there's nothing we can do about it, you know?
Well, and wasn't it Hemingway that said, write drunk, edit sober? So
exactly.
Write high, edit sober.
Yeah, yeah. That way, when you go back and you go, what the fuck was I saying? You can at least
oh man. Why am I talking about Thailand all of a sudden? I don't know.
Yeah, the Ancient Aliens must have been playing in the background because I was on like, what the hell? Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to, you know, to update everybody on this. You know, this doesn't mean that cannabis is at Schedule 3 now or anytime soon. You know, we're probably months, if not a couple years away from this whole process being done. Like I said, you know, this is a 60-day time period where it's just sitting there. So we're going to have times like this where it's just by law, it has to sit there by a certain amount of days before it can move on to the next process. So we're stuck here for 60 days. You might as well make it worth it and make a public comment, you know, make your time worth it. We're all going to be sitting here twiddling our thumbs. At least we have a timeline and we know how long they have. You know, we at least know it's 60 days. That's all they have. That's all we have, et cetera, et cetera. Go out there, make your public comments. I'm going to make a public comment. Justin is. And if you guys could too, dope. If you want to post it, cool. That's all up to you. Post your public comments, what you said. And I think that would be kind of cool to start. You know, if you guys want to start posting your public comments, I'll share them. Tag me, and you know, I'll share it on Instagram and everything on my stories. I think it's really important that people see the process of our government and how you can get involved and participate.
Well, and with it being an election year too, I mean, if you see someone saying that we're going to legalize it, read behind the title.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just because it's going to be the juiciest carrot in the world this fall when we're looking at election cycles and all that. So, you know, if someone says something that really just super obviously lines up, read behind it, understand what else is going on, what else is buried in there, because that's how we all get screwed over. Because it's, you know, they made the promise, and the promise wasn't even remotely close to what we all thought it was. So,
Oh, 100%, dude. You know,
Do your learning.
yeah, exactly. All right, and watch shows like myself or Waxy Brown that keep you guys educated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's everything I have. Do you have anything else, man?
No, I think that's pretty much it. And, you know, looking forward to seeing where this industry goes, and looking forward to seeing New Mexico continue to be on the map. I mean, people can't wrap their heads around the diversity and the kind of people that we have in this industry in New Mexico, which is one of the things that I absolutely love about it. I mean, it's something where seeing these people from Texas come over here and they're just like, this is the coolest thing ever. It's like, no, you can't mess with Texas, but you can buy New Mexico weed. So let's go for it.
Right. Exactly. And you can come enjoy our weed in our mountains. So yeah, it's great seeing Little Dubai, you know, do its thing and grow and everything. So, but before I go and before I let you guys go, I have to pay today's bills and thank our sponsor today. So thank you to today's sponsor, Turquoise Bloom. Check them out at 162 Wyatt Drive here in Las Cruces. I guess home of the $5 pre-roll. So go ahead and check them out. Thank you for that, Justin. I appreciate that, buddy. So check them out, guys, and make sure you like, subscribe, share, whatever you got to do to stay in the know and stay on top of it, guys. I will see you next week. All right, shoots.
See ya.